In first period, we learn about English. In second period, we learn about math. But at no point do most of us have a period in drug education. So the real question here, among others, is should drug education be taught in school, and how can we make it more effective? I'm your host, Gabino Meraz, and this is Spotcast. I'm joined today by Kobe Hollins.
Hey.
Brandon Friedman.
Hello.
And Levi Cox.
What's up?
So the first question I want to ask you guys today is, what do you think has caused success in previous attempts at drug education?
I don't think there has been much success, if any, in previous attempts at drug education, honestly.
Yeah, at least from everything we've seen so far, I don't really think there's been any notable success.
I would just like to say that I agree with the both of you, considering that like programs like DARE and other programs have not even been around for our generation of school.
Okay, so it's obvious we're all in agreement here. So now that that's out of the way, another question that we could bring up after this is, if you don't think there has been success, why is that so?
Well, I guess I'll start. I think for the most part, it's a bit forced upon people. Like, they're all shoved in the classroom, and whenever you're forced to do something, you don't really want to do it. Although, it's also the question is, if you don't force them to do it, are they actually going to go? But it's complicated.
Honestly, I think it's just the way it was presented, because whenever I hear anything about DARE, or whenever I talk to some of my older cousins or family members who went through it, they always talk about how it wasn't really, it was the way they presented to them, how it seemed kind of corny, or it seemed like it wasn't as important as the DARE program tried to make it seem. And whenever I always hear about it, it's always DARE didn't work, or like we all let the DARE lion down because now everybody's like smoking weed and doing drugs now, and that's just kind of the whole opposite of what the program wanted to do.
I agree with that, but I also think that the people who were teaching these drug education courses and classes weren't exactly qualified enough, and I feel like there should be some sort of like certificate or course that you must go through to be qualified to teach something this crucial in a teenager's life, especially.
It does make sense, because like you wouldn't want to have someone just walk in there and say the wrong thing. There should be like a process of what you can and can't say, how you should and shouldn't say it, to make sure you get the proper impact.
I also think maybe having someone who has gone through substance abuse and the problems with it, or maybe some family members, would be maybe a good idea for, telling the class about it, since they actually firsthand know what it can do and the things it can do with people around you.
Okay. So how do you guys think we can make current iterations on drug education more successful?
Well, one of the things I noticed about a lot of the previous attempts is they use a lot of hip new things to try to, sway the kids. Like, I remember one where they had a bunch of animated characters that were popular at the time, and basically just put them in one episode and talking about drugs. And while you're like, cool, these guys are clearly just going to get bored after a little while, because it's just kind of...
So you don't agree with the whole trend appeal of drug education?
Correct.
I mean, yeah, but I do think that there is some substance to that, because there used to be like cigarette commercials that got banned like 60 years ago, where there was like Flintstones were smoking, where they had like cards characters who were smoking and stuff, and that was kind of being advertised towards kids. So I can kind of see why they thought that, but at the same time, if you're going to appeal towards teenagers, which would be the primary target for drug education, I don't think that's going to work as well.
Yeah, it depends on the demographic.
Yeah, because we're not as attached to cartoon characters as like 60-year-olds are, so it's not going to be as much of the intended effect.
That's fair.
Very true, and like I said with my previous answer to the previous question as well, is that I still think that there should be a lot more qualification when it comes to teaching or instructing these drug education courses, just because you really have to think about how crucial it is in the teen's lifespan or lifetime, where you got major brain development happening, major emotion changes, hormones, etc. So it might be good to actually have someone who's legitimately qualified to teach that course.
Yeah, and I think personally it has more to do with the presentation, that they like, kind of what Brandon, what you're saying, just the way that they talked about it and how they presented the drugs to the teens. That I think you have to be really careful with how you describe it, because you may describe it so well, they may be like, oh, I want to try that. You have to describe it in a way that's like, you don't do this because X, Y, Z, or you shouldn't try this because of that, and that. So it also depends on how you present it, like, and who you're presenting it to.
And on topic of like my idea or Levi's idea with having people who've gone through the experience, I can also tell you about the sketchiness of actually acquiring the drugs and the dangers with that too. So and it'll be more accurate as well.
Yeah, like with like lace drugs, or where people are cutting with a different agent, like with the THC carts, where they're putting like vitamin E instead of like the THC oil in it. It's causing people to like die from it. Like there was a kid in Michigan who needed to get a whole new set of lungs because of the vitamin E was messing his lungs up, and they were just scarred, so he had to get a whole new transplant.
Just like that, it's like you never really know what's inside the actual drug. Just like you see people like Little Peep and Mac Miller passing away due to drugs that are laced because they think that they're getting it from a very reliable source, but in the end that source wasn't so reliable because he yet has to get the drugs from the other person too.
And then it goes back to what you were saying about how someone who's taught and trained on how to teach the class, so they could just straight up tell you what effects these have on your body. Like for example, ecstasy, Molly, it's a fact that long-term effects of ecstasy include kidney failure, psychosis, hemorrhaging, damage to your memory and thought centers of your brain. And an exact quote from this, it says the National Drug Institute of Drug Abuse says that it is as if the brain switchboard was torn apart and then rewired backwards. And that doesn't sound too positive to me, honestly.
So going off of what Levi said earlier, what do you think should qualify somebody to teach a drug education course?
I still stand by my case earlier that they should have gone through it themselves or have had a family member that has gone through it.
I think it should be strictly like a doctor, or not strictly, but I think a doctor or physician or someone who knows the body and can explain to you how your body should work and how it's going to work after a long time on these drugs. Like I was watching Big Mouth last week, and there was an episode where one character got Adderall. He started passing out all the other kids in the grade, and the way they presented Adderall in the show was like it was like a general in their head, and he was yelling at them all the time, just saying, "Do this, do this, do this, do this," and they were all getting tired of and how the drug wouldn't wear off over time. And it was like, yo, that looks awful. I'd be terrified if that happened to me. Like, it's just how you present it. And then if the doctor's like, yo, this is gonna do this to your brain, do this to your lungs, this to your heart, and you're like, yo, I like all those organs, I don't want them to be destroyed. So
this next question goes more off of what Levi said earlier, which is, what do you think should qualify somebody to teach drug education? What do you guys think about that?
So like I said earlier, like, yeah, there should be a course, etc., but I do also feel like either past experiences, like family or friends that have experienced this, etc., or even like just being like a pharmacist, not a pharmacist, my bad, but like a doctor in like either like just the body, like the heart, the lungs, the stomach, the brain, like people who know
a physiology background.
Yeah.
I think it should be more of someone who can focus on the drawbacks, the consequences, and the negative aspects. Like, for example, like it says that having possession under 2 pounds a week can get you, it's classified as a class 6 felony in Arizona, which can get you 1 to 2 years in prison. I feel like most people don't know that. So if you make them aware of the consequences that can happen of having these drugs without even doing them, that will also help and aid them when they're trying to teach them and tell them this, you shouldn't do this. And that could also be a part of the selection process of who would be qualified to teach it.
I think it should probably be someone, maybe of a young adult who has gone through substance abuse, or a family member, because not only will they be able to connect to a younger audience better, such as teens, but they've also gone through the experience and can show the more personal side of like what it does to you and your family, and like the sketchiness of actually obtaining the drug and risks that come with that as well.
So you want to show more of that first person perspective of the whole situation.
Yeah, with someone younger who can connect to teens better.
Right, someone more relatable.
Correct.
All right, well, that's all the time we have here today. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. This is Podcast.